From the Corner Office is brought to you by Synovus Bank, championing business growth through trusted, relationship-driven banking throughout the Gulf Coast region. Jeff Eslinger could have walked away from the whole building business for good in 2010 when the industry was collapsing around him. Instead, Jeff took a different approach. He bet on himself and his partners, and in the worst economic climate in decades, he started another custom home building business, EM Custom Homes in Sarasota. Jeff's story of guts and resilience is one the Business Observer tells regularly, both in print and online. To read more, subscribe. Go to businessobserverfl.com. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer's From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Jeff Eslinger, president of EM Custom Homes in Sarasota. Jeff, welcome and thanks for being here.
I appreciate it, Mark. I look forward to it.
Excellent. Me as well. We're going to talk about EM Homes, home building, your career in home building. Before we get into that, let's get our audience to know you a little bit better, Jeff, with first ever questions. What was your first paid real job?
1976, when my father started Eslinger Construction, which later became Eslinger Homes, I was in charge of digging footers and tying steel. And then I worked my way up from there.
And tying steel. Wow. Okay. So that was your father's business. That's how you got that. Was that the lowest of the jobs, or was there something beneath that?
Well, you can't get any lower than digging footers in the middle of August in Florida. But no, my dad always had the philosophy that before I give you the keys to the car, I want you to understand how the car is put together. So my brother and I was 16 years old. My brother was 14 years old, and my dad started a construction company and gave us the opportunity to work after school and just kind of started from there, from the simple things of shooting elevations to putting footers in the ground and watching that process, and then coming back and after the blocks or the walls are put up, and we learned how to frame. And so as time went on, it was just something that we learned, all the different aspects of construction to have a better feeling of how things were done. In fact, I was the first painter we ever had. Now, I do not like painting anymore, but I was the first painter that we had. So it was just a long-term experience leading to, basically where I'm at today.
Yeah, to get those things. What maybe this was in that time frame too. What was your first car?
My first car was a 1976 powder blue Camaro.
Wow, you were styling. 76 blue Camaro.
Yeah, man, that was my first car. And, one of the reasons why I went to work for my dad was to pay for that car. So, yep, that was my first car, Camaro. And since I've probably had 4 or 5 of them. It's just always something that I
Wow.
really liked.
Very cool. What, when, and what was the experience like your first time out of the United States? Where did you go? What was that experience like?
Well, in 1985, my dad came to me and he said, I want you to go somewhere else and get your experience and then bring it back to the company. So a friend of mine and we went to as far as we could get away from Sarasota. We went to Irvine, California. So long story short, my first time out of the country was a afternoon visit to Tijuana, Mexico.
Yes.
Now, being from Florida, an old country boy from the beach, boy, that was quite the experience. I spent most of the time just looking around going, wow.
Yeah. Fish out of water for sure. All right, so EM, moving forward to the business, EM Custom Homes. Jeff, tell us about EM Custom Homes and what is your niche in the marketplace?
Well, EM Custom Homes, our niche in the marketplace is anywhere from 900 to about 3 million custom design build homes. I started EM Custom Homes about 10 years ago with my partner, Dan Maglick, and our families were, ran kind of parallel together with Eslinger Homes and Magalick Homes. In fact, our folks used to hang out together back in the 70s, so we have a long history. And I was just in the right place at the right time with a developer that we had known, and he offered me an opportunity. So I walked out of that lunch with an opportunity and no company. So I went to Dan and said, "Listen, we got this opportunity. What do you think?" And here we are 10 years later.
An opportunity, but no company. So what's that like, that entrepreneurial mindset to sort of go out there on your own with little safety net? What's that like mentally for you?
Well, it was through the 38 years that we had Eslinger Homes. I've always worked in a family business and always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And when the economy was right, and again, I was just in the right place at the right time, and had lunch with a developer that we had known. And he said, "I have an opportunity here for you. I always loved working with you and your brother. If you can put it together, I got a spot for you." So like I said, I walked out of that lunch knowing that had an opportunity and go out and do our own thing again. And so I just started putting thoughts together and met with Dan and just presented the idea to him, and he was all for it, and we just kind of started putting our thoughts together, and the first thing we did was develop a new model for a subdivision that my brother and I had been in previously called Twin Rivers. And they were going to do the end of phase 4 and phase 5, which originally was supposed to be done in 2010, but because of the recession they took everything off. So he refired it up and just presented me the opportunity, and so I I I went out and put it all together. And I'll tell you what, Mark, it was scary in the beginning, but we just kind of put our put our heads up and just kept moving forward. And like I said, here we are 10 years later.
Yeah, talking about leadership and the companies and entities sort of that you've been part of and grown. Jeff, what's one characteristic you think every leader needs to have? What's a must-have characteristic?
Well, I think the first thing is patience and being a good listener. Because I was a baseball player. I played high school, played some semi-pro, and it was always okay. So I was a pitcher, but at the same time, there was 8 other guys that were behind me as a team, and in order to be succeed, you had to rely on those 8 other guys, and they had to rely on me. So I kinda take that philosophy in doing business. My dad always said, "Don't ever think it's about you, it's who you surround yourself with." So I've always, throughout my whole career, whether it's working in the family business or whether it's working in EM Custom Homes, we try to surround ourselves with people of like kind attitudes and motivation.
Yeah, and so you say patience. I'm curious how that works because sometimes you have to be quick decision makers, right? I mean, sometimes as you said, the opportunity. How do you balance patience of being a good leader with seizing the right opportunity?
Well, I think part of that, Mark, has to do with the people that are around you and listening to what their comments are and what their motivation is and the direction they see us going as a team. And you take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's kind of like when you create a business. You talk to all these business advisors or you talk to these motivational speakers, and I was brought up to if you take 10% of what this guy said and 10% of what that guy said and you put it all together and you mold it to achieve the goal that you want to achieve, then I think there's I grew up in a family philosophy that there's only one way to do things the right way, but listen to what people have to say that you've taken the time to surround yourself with. And, you know, being a business owner and the president of a company, you listen to others' influence, you listen to others' comments, but ultimately you have to make that decision. And if you do your research and if you and you have the patience to listen to other people, then it helps you to make the right decision. But ultimately, I'm sticking my neck out for everybody else, and it's
Yeah.
just part of what we do.
Yeah, so you talked about your family, your father. Who's influenced, Jeff, your leadership approach and style, and who've been some of your mentors along the way?
Well, I would say 1 and 2, with not being 1 and 2, but equally important, would be, my grandfather, who was a small commercial developer in Bradenton, and my dad. And then throughout my career, just listening to what other people said, and I had a couple mentors, and a former developer, and Billy Springer, and the guru of sales in this area, Don Bryant. And I would, as we were growing and learning the business, being in with my father, his intent was to retire in 1997, which he did, and he left us with a company that did, 20, 25 homes a year. My brother and I had different ideas, and we wanted to take to the next level. And I was always saying, Dad, we can do this. Dad, we can do that. And his comment was always, I've put my time in for King and Country. The next step's going to be when I'm gone, you guys do whatever you want. And so that's what we did. And we took a company that was doing 25 homes a year. At the height of our success, we were doing 40, 50, almost 60 homes a year. But we took the time to put it all together the right way, through business consultants, through sitting down with people that mentored me along the way, as far as making a professional presentation, whether it be through a model, whether it be through sales material, and just surrounding myself again with people that I respected and had some success or were having success in the business, you know, just getting a little taste of this and a little taste of that, and putting it all together to accommodate where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there.
Yeah, so you mentioned your grandfather. What did you learn from him? Tell us about him and some lessons that you learned from him.
Work, work ethic, work ethic. And in when my brother and I, Uh, when my dad retired, my brother and I were putting these thoughts together. We actually had a family credo that comes from my great grandfather to my grandfather, and my dad, and myself, and I passed it on to my kids. And we actually used it as a tagline in our marketing in the beginning was, there's only one way to do things the right way. If you're not going to do it the right way, then why bother to do it at all? And that was just, growing up with in my grandfather's world. Like I said, he was a small commercial developer in Bradenton, and then he would also buy things on the side and personally rehab houses and stuff. And I was always there with him as a 10-year-old, as a 15-year-old, just kind of helping grandpa out, and watching the way he did things and how he interacted with those people. I took a little of that from him, and then the next step was working underneath my father and just kind of seeing how he did things. And just, it's like anything else, Mark, taking a little bit of this, taking a little bit of that, and making it work for what you
Yeah,
want to do.
for what's the environment you have.
Yep.
What what's a decision, Jeff, that you made that was a really hard, tough decision at the time that looking back helped shaped where you are today with the organization?
Starting EM Custom Homes. When we closed down Eslinger Homes in 2010, it was a very emotional scenario. We didn't go bankrupt. Everybody's houses got done. All the bills were paid, and we rode off into the sunset, because after 38 years and the way the economy was, we just thought it was a good opportunity to end it on a good note. And so as time went on, I'm also a licensed real estate broker. I was dabbling in real estate. I was doing onesies and twosies here, like build a house for somebody, and or do some rehabs. But then when this opportunity was presented to me from this developer, like I said before, um, uh, I gave that some thought. I counseled with my dad. I counseled with my wife. I counseled with my brother and my sister, who were part of Eslinger Homes. And everybody said, no, that time has passed. You need to let it go and do something else. But I didn't listen to anything. I listened, but I didn't listen. And so I moved forward with EM Custom Homes against everybody's advice. Like, you just got to let it go, Jeff. You got to do something else. Like I said, I listened, but I didn't. And that's probably one of the biggest, best decisions I've made in my whole career.
Yeah, so you went with, as you said, a little bit of advice from different people, but stuck with essentially your gut and said, "This is where I think the value that we can provide
Well,
is."
I tell you, it's something that I wanted to do. Um, the idea of running and having your own company, I mean, it's a very stressful scenario. And with this opportunity that was presented, like I said, I counseled with all these different family members. Everybody said, "No, don't do it." Well, guess what? I did it anyway,
Yeah,
and
here we are.
and here we are.
Yeah. What's the best leadership advice you've ever received, Jeff?
For my dad, um, never think it's about you. It's about who you surround yourself with. And so I try, like I said before, I try to surround myself with people that can influence the way I'm going and what I'm doing.
Yeah, people surround yourself. What in your career, what feedback did you hear, receive that was really tough at the time that you learned the most from?
Well, I'll tell you, I was giving that a lot of thought when I was in regards to that question, and I think taking some of the processes and some of the ideas that we had in Eslinger Homes and taking them into EM Custom Homes, that you hear comments from different people that maybe some of this stuff is antiquated. You need to update your processes. You need to look at the way you do things. And although it's hard to hear that you're not doing it the most efficient way basically with time management and some of the way we're presenting things, to hear that, you take it personally at first, but then if you step back and take a deep breath and look at, these people are right, because this is coming from this guy that's done this, or this is coming from this lady that's done this. And so, you know, um, every here's another thing that my grandfather used to say that I live by to this day. If you're not learning something new every day, you're not doing your job.
Yeah, great advice. Excellent, Jeff. As we're winding down here, we're getting into spring. What can we look forward to from EM Custom Homes the rest of the year? What are you most excited about in 2026?
Well, being that we're a medium-sized custom home builder, our opportunities to go into neighborhoods to put up models like we've traditionally done over the years is far and few between, because a lot of the nationals are coming in, they're buying everything up and eliminating those opportunities. So in the last year to 2 years, I've kind of taken the direction of our company to doing large remodels, to doing speculative building for on the barrier islands. We've done several projects out on Siesta Key, and I really like that idea of working with a client, for example, that buys one of the storm damaged houses and tears it down, and we take something from a piece of dirt and create a dream. I mean, I really like that, and I think with the spring coming up and the summer coming up, you're gonna get an influx of a lot of folks that are gonna wanna be in the barrier islands and look at those kinda, water on the water opportunities, and for us, that's exciting, because to take somebody's rough idea that a lot of times comes over on a piece of paper or a napkin and create that for their family, and then them step back and go, "Wow, that's exactly what I was looking for." Imma tell you what, man, there's nothing in business for me, there's nothing better than that, to hear a client say, "Wow."
Love it. Wow, fantastic. Jeff Eslinger, president of EM Custom Homes, thank you for joining us on From the Corner Office.
Alright, I appreciate it. You guys have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer from the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.